Joe Welling laid out all the evidence on a large table. The birth certificate of a girl in Fife, Idaho, ID card, pages from the Arizona telephone directory, scraps of paper with scribbled notes, including the names of lawyers, and the phrase 402 months. It was all in the safe. And it is this safe that is the key element of this mystery. This safe worried the investigator for about 2 years. As an investigator of the Social Security Service of the SO, he caught more crooks than he can count. But this business with the safe has completely exhausted him. Not the case itself, but who the main character was. It's about a woman named Lori Ruff, 41-year-old wife and mother, who did not really fit these roles. She was a vegetarian from East Texas. A pretty brunette who liked to dress very modestly. An adult woman who dreamed of an easy-bake baby oven for Christmas. This safe belonged to Lori. For many years she kept it locked in the bedroom closet, among the things of her husband Blake Ruff. The husband was strictly forbidden to look into this safe, and the husband obeyed his wife's wish. Lori died in the year 2010. It happened after Blake's relatives looked into her safe. The contents shocked them. The woman they knew as Lori was actually a completely different person 20 years ago. She had created a different identity for herself. This is our mystery. If Lori isn't Lori, then who is she? And why did she go so far in trying to hide her past? Welling's investigation took place in his Seattle office, in a Texas family, in a Nevada post office, and in a cemetery in Washington's Puyallup. He clung to every clue, followed every trace. In the end, he called the newspaper office and said, "I have a great story for you." The story begins in the 2003 year since the entry of Lori into the Ruff family. The Ruffs are a fairly close-knit family from East Texas, warm and friendly people. Their children graduated from school and specialized in the provinces. They live between Dallas and Sheriffport in the small town of Longview. They work in banks and real estate agencies and are well known in the area. Blake's paternal grandparents took root in these places during the oil boom of the 30s of the last century. Blake received a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Texas at Austin, and also a degree in telecommunications management from Devry University. He worked for several years at Cutout. His family describes him as a nice guy and an outrageously honest man. They met Lori Kennedy at the Northwest Bible Church in Dallas and soon began dating. Lori was smart, she liked animals, and she also loved to get out into the world. Blake's parents couldn't wait to meet his girlfriend, so they invited Lori to dinner. At dinner, the girl told that her parents had died. She had no brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. She was all alone. Lori didn't go to high school, she went straight to college. The Ruffs didn't trust a girl with a past that was full of gaps. But Blake didn't notice any of this. Blake is the kind of person who believes everything they are told, said his cousin Miles about him. One day, Lori told Blake that she had destroyed all the photos of her parents, and Blake believed her. When Blake decided to marry Lori, he wanted to put an ad in the newspaper with the text, "Blake Ruff, son of John and Nancy Ruff, and Lori Kennedy, daughter." But Lori did not name the parents and forbade Blake to make such an announcement. Less than a year later, Blake and Lori eloped and got married in a small church outside of Dallas. The only guest at their wedding was a preacher in September of the 2011 year. Investigator Joe Welling was at a meeting in Washington, One of the congressman's aides handed him a thick folder. The folder contained items from Lori's safe and other documents provided by the Ruff family. They knew that Lori wasn't who she pretended to be, and they wanted to find out who she really was. The SO, which investigated cases of fraud with respect to Social Security numbers, had a place to expand its activities. As a special agent from Seattle, Welling was an expert in identity theft cases. He caught many scammers who opened credit cards in the names of strangers. He neutralized crooks who defrauded banks of millions of dollars. He was tracking people who changed their names in order not to pay alimony. Then I thought it would be a no-brainer for me. The congressman who handed over the folder was a friend of the Ruff family, as well as an employee of the Secret Service of the White House. He just wanted to know that she wasn't a KGB mole. Perhaps this version was far-fetched. But an ordinary person will not invent a new identity for himself without a reason. Therefore, there was definitely a reason for the investigation. It was clear that Lori had not done this for the money. Then for what? Welling checked all the options. Maybe she was hiding after committing a terrible crime. Or was she his victim? Or was she running away from a violent roommate? Or maybe she was hiding from the adherents of some sect. These questions had yet to be answered. But one thing Welling knew for sure. She's been planning this for a very long time. After getting married, Blake and Lori bought a house on a 2-acre plot in the town of Leonard, with a population of almost 2,000 people. This place was 125 miles from the house of the Ruffs. The neighbors did not understand the young couple. Blake was trying to be friendly, but Lori wasn't. They watched as in the evenings she walked around the perimeter of her plot, trying not to catch anyone's eye. She disliked people so much that she preferred to work remotely at home. As for her job, Lori called herself a marketing consultant. Mostly she worked as a mystery shopper. I tested new products, ate hamburgers, and wrote reports about the diner service. For 6 years, Ruff's neighbor could recall only one case of communication with Lori. Lori and Blake lived in their own world almost constantly. In a cocoon, if I may say so. More than anything, Lori wanted a baby. According to Blake, she miscarried several times. Now his family claims that they were due to the fact that she was actually older than she pretended. She treated infertility for a long time, and, finally, in the 2008 year, gave birth to a girl. Because she was holding a child, it could be argued that she had not interacted with children at all before. Lori tried to protect the child from everything in the world. If the child tried to chew something, Lori immediately took it away. She wouldn't let her mother-in-law look after Nancy's daughter. I never even left my daughter alone with her. Lori's greatest pleasure was going to tea shops. She dressed up her daughter, and posed in public. But tension was growing between the Ruff family and Lori. On the one hand, she spent hours tracking their genealogy and collecting family recipes. But during general meetings, it was common for her to leave everyone to take a nap. When the other women gathered in the kitchen to talk and cook, Lori preferred not to join them. According to Blake, as time went on, the situation in the family became increasingly difficult. Lori constantly found a reason to find fault. She didn't want her daughter to go out with them. For Blake, who was very close to his family, it was very difficult. As a result, Blake's patience snapped. At the end of the summer of 2000, he moved in with his parents and filed for divorce. Lori has completely withdrawn. A neighbor said that when he first saw her after the divorce, she and her 2-year-old daughter looked very thin. A neighbor suggested that Laura come to confession at the church where he served as a pastor. She bought notebooks in which she wrote incoherently about what was wrong with her and how to return it to her. After talking to a neighbor, he couldn't help her, but he noticed her hands. They were the longest arms I've ever seen. And they were constantly on the move. She pulled at her hair, stretched out her hand, and looked at her. Then she would turn it over, look at it again, and finally put it on her lap. For some reason, her hands were very important to her. Lori was talking in a circle, repeating the same thing several times. It was as if she was constantly fixated on the same thought. It was like an obsessive-compulsive disorder. Blake said that she bought medications for the treatment of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as well as Tourette's syndrome. Blake also came to his neighbor's confession with his brother David. They looked strange too. Mostly my brother talked as if he was Blake's translator. As a result, the confession did not help to restore the family. To be honest, I don't think she was able to accept the help she needed. She was obsessed with an idea. In the fall of 2000, Lori started sending threatening emails to the Ruffs. The threats were related to the conditions of guardianship. Then, the Ruffs noticed that one of the keys to their house was missing. Blake's mom remembered hearing the gate creak in the backyard on the morning before Christmas. The Ruffs were so worried that they asked the judge to issue a warrant to Lori, according to which she was forbidden to approach the Ruffs' house. On Christmas Eve, 2010 year, Blake's father John Ruff left the house for a newspaper. As he approached the garage door, he saw a black Chevrolet Tahoe idling near their driveway. John Ruff immediately ran into the house and called the police. Lori was in the car. She shot herself. Blake was grieving very much. Inside the car, the police found an 11-page letter addressed to my wonderful husband, as well as another letter for their daughter, with instructions to read it on her 18th birthday. The police report said, "It contains the ravings of an obviously sick person. After the funeral, Lori Miles and several other members of the Ruff family went to Leonard. All along, they knew that Lori was hiding something. Miles said that if necessary, we would turn the whole house upside down to find out who she was. But when they arrived at the house, they decided to call the sheriff because they suspected that some traps might be waiting for them. There was a crash in the house. The crib was soiled. There was a pile of dishes and laundry in it, as well as garbage bags with torn documents. There were sheets of paper everywhere, covered with Lori's scribbles. When there was no more space on the sheet, she wrote on top of the text she had just written. Before Miles left, Blake told him about the place where Lori forbade him to look. Safe hidden in a marked cabinet, handmade. Miles cracked the safe with a screwdriver. Inside, he found a court order dated 1988, stating that Lori had changed her name. Before that, her name was Becky Sue Turner. It so happened that a private investigator lived next door. Miles asked him to dig into Lori's file. The results of the detective's work amazed everyone. Becky Sue was dead a long time ago. The headline on the front page of the 1971 newspaper read, "3 children died in a fire in Fife." The deceased Becky Sue was only 2 years old. Welling simply called her Jane Doe. He looks at the evidence again and again. I couldn't find anything about her until 1988, just because she hid her tracks perfectly. It took Jane Doe 2 months to assume someone else's identity. First, she received a copy of Becky Sue's birth certificate from Bakersfield, California. At that time, the county authorities could send copies of documents by mail to anyone. It is noteworthy that Becky Sue was born in one state and died in another. She knew what she was doing, because this method increases the chances of cheating databases. She obtained an Idaho ID for Amy Becky Sue in Boise City, stating that she was 18 years old. This suggests that Jane Doe was in Idaho in 1988. This tidbit confirms the hypothesis that the woman was from the Northwest. She also had a mailbox in Boulder City, Nevada, that forwarded her mail to Dallas. After getting her ID, she went to a Dallas court to change her name from Becky Sue Turner to Lori Erica Kennedy. Then the most important stage of obtaining a social insurance card began. In the US, this is a kind of holy grail in identity theft cases. These days, most children get a social security number at birth. But then the card could easily have been obtained as a teenager. That's exactly what Jane Doe did. She became Lori Kennedy from scratch just by getting an official document. If a person changes his name and social security number, he becomes a completely different person for the state. The whole process took Lori less than 2 months. Lori went to college without providing data on her studies in high school. She passed the exams. She graduated from the University of Texas at Arlington with a degree in business. Welling found several of Lori's friends and colleagues. One of them said that she worked as a dancer in a men's club in the early 90s. But no one could say anything about Lori's life until 1988. The safe also contained letters of recommendation from employers and homeowners. There was also a note. North Hollywood Police. 402 months. Ben Perkins is a lawyer. Does this mean that Lori was under investigation? She spent 402 months in prison. Welling followed this trail. The letter of recommendation seems to be fake, signed by a person who never existed. Attorney Ben Perkins couldn't remember a man named Lori Kennedy. Welling uploaded Lori's photo to every database he knew. Nothing. He sent her fingerprints to the FBI. They didn't match the criminal's fingerprints. If she was facing jail time, the police would still have to take her fingerprints. The fingerprints were also uploaded to the database of the Ministry of National Security. Also nothing. After examining medical records, Welling was able to find out that Lori had breast implants. Each of them has its own serial number, and the serial number can lead to the doctor's records. Welling clicked. However, it turned out that the operation was performed when Jane Doe had already become Lori Kennedy, and Lori's body had already been cremated. Valenko obtained samples of calorie DNA and compared them with genetic materials from databases. There were no coincidences. Then, he got into the National Archive of Missing and Unidentified Persons (NEMOS). He also searched for information on Ancestry's genealogical site.com. He expected someone to take a step towards him. In addition, Welling was interested in the question of why Jane Doe chose the name Becky Sue. She may have seen the obituary years ago. Or a tombstone. Or maybe she knew Becky Sue Turner's family. Sitting in the living room of Becky Sue's mother, Welling took out a portrait of Jane Doe. But the woman just shook her head. Mr. Turner also reacted. And another dead end. Jane Doe stole the identity even before the advent of digital photos, emails, the internet. So all these technologies cannot solve this case, although they greatly simplify the search for information. Welling understands that this is not the most important thing, but whenever there is a lull in the work, he returns to the Jane Doe case. He recalls the history of the safe, which follows through California and Nevada, Idaho and Arizona, and ends in Texas. Meanwhile, the IRFs are surprised. They want to solve this riddle. At the very least, they want to be able to tell Blake and Lori's daughter who her mother was. But on the other hand, they are afraid to find out something terrible. Something they wouldn't want to know about. With the support of the Ruff family, Welling told this story to a Times journalist in 2013 year. They all hoped that readers would help them find the answers they were interested in. Perhaps someone would be able to identify this woman 30 years later. Subsequently, this story flowed from the newspaper pages to the web. Over the past 3 years, many theories have emerged about the identity of Lori Ruff. Did she run away from the sect? Or from an abusive roommate? Maybe she committed a terrible crime. Or was she under a witness protection program, and in general, did she really kill herself? But the more Valen learned, the less sensational the truth became. For most online detectives, the investigation of the Lori Ruff case consisted of viewing photos of missing persons and women who looked like Lori. Colleen Fitzpatrick, a female genealogist, took a different approach to the case. As a scientist, she worked on the study of lasers and optics for 25 years, often using light rays as criteria for measuring something. People asked me what I do for a living. I'd say I'm shedding light on things. When Colleen heard Lori's story, DNA immediately came to mind. Lori and her husband Blake Ruff have a daughter born in 2008 year. The daughter has a part of Lori's DNA. By isolating Blake's DNA from the daughter's DNA, you can easily get Lori's DNA. The Ruff family sent saliva samples to 2 companies that conduct DNA tests and help families find relatives. The Ruffs assumed that Blake and Lori's daughter would one day want to know who her mother was. We would like to have the opportunity to answer her questions, said Miles Derby, Blake's cousin. Fitzpatrick found several people whose DNA matched Lori's, but they were all very distantly related. Therefore, the data obtained did not help to identify Lori. The name of one of these relatives, Michael Cassidy, was known. There was no other data. Just the name. There are thousands of exactly the same names in the United States. Welling tried to write him a message on the genealogical website, but received no response. Maybe he didn't see the message at all. Ruff and Welling and Fitzpatrick were again at a dead end. They began to wait. Fitzpatrick periodically checked websites while working on other projects. And suddenly, Lori's second cousin appeared. She was a distant relative, but she helped make up the family tree. Fitzpatrick created a family tree based on the ancestors of a second cousin. Fitzpatrick also found out that the family has Irish roots. Lori's great-great-grandfather was born in 1848 year. Then, and this is very important, another branch appears in the family tree, with a name already familiar to us: Michael Cassidy. Michael Cassidy lived in Philadelphia. Having built a family tree, Fitzpatrick realized that Lori's mother was almost certainly one of Michael's aunts, but which one exactly? And what was Lori's real name? There was no way to find out at this stage. Colleen Fitzpatrick called Welling. Welling was convinced that she was right. When Welling flew to Philadelphia in March of 2000, he decided not to meet Michael Cassidy. Instead, he decided to meet another person, but how should he introduce himself? Hello? I don't know you, and you don't know me. But I think you and this woman are related. I don't know her name either. Can you help me? But the work had to be done. When Welling came to work with a relative of Lori, he did not have a certificate that he was a civil servant. Welling was in a suit, behaved calmly, and just hoped for the best. Do you have a minute to tell me a story? It was with these words that Welling began his conversation with the woman. Before I tell you about Laura, DNA, and great-great-grandparents, But the story was so complicated that Welling did not believe in success. Then he pulled out the photos and spread them out one by one on the table. Finally, he got to the last photo of Lori's driver's license, taken when she was about 40 years old. And then the woman exclaimed, "Oh my God! Why, it's Kimberly!" Welling received countless emails from people who thought they had the answers. They constantly called him after the publication of the article in the Times. And now he really had an answer. It made my hair stand on end when I realized that this woman knew who Lori really was. The next day, Welling talked to the entire family of this woman and tried to answer all the questions they asked. They were alarmed, but one thing was certain. It was definitely Kimberly. Her mother was Michael Cassidy's aunt, Diana. Diana was married to James McLean. Thus, Lori Raff was actually Kimberly McLean. Later, Diana underwent DNA tests, and the match was confirmed. Now Diana is already in her 9th decade. The news shocked her. The last time she saw Kimberly was 30 years ago. And now she found out that her daughter is dead. Of course, there's a lot we don't know and can't know about Kimberly's disappearance. All these events happened a long time ago. Diana refused to give an interview, entrusting it to her brother Tom Cassidy. Tom provided additional information. Kimberly grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. She had a sister. Her mother Diana was a housewife. Kimberly's father was a carpenter and a volunteer firefighter. When Kimberly was a teenager, her parents divorced. The girl's life has changed, her school has changed. These events have greatly affected her. In 1986 year, when Kimberly was 18 years old, she moved to the settlement of the Kings of Prussia, half an hour's drive from her mother's house. She sent a message to her mother that the move was the right decision and asked her never to pursue her. The family never heard from Kimberly again. They tried to track her down, but in her message, Kimberly assured them that they would not succeed anyway, since she had changed her name twice. Thus, Lori Raff was not a member of a sect and was not a spy. She was just a teenager who ran away from home. After running away from home in 1986, Lori didn't change her name until 1988. It is known for sure that she lived for some time in Idaho, California, and Las Vegas, and then moved to Texas. Then she passed her school exams, graduated from university, and married Blake Rafe. They had a child. Kimberly had a normal life. But as an ordinary person, you can suspect something. Just imagine, none of the family members congratulated her on graduating from university. None of her relatives attended her wedding. Her mom didn't help when Kimberly's baby was born. Kimberly was born on October 16, 1968th year. Every year, when this day came, she could not celebrate it. And all these lies have been layered over the years. The Raffs saw what it led to. They watched as Lori became increasingly concerned, which subsequently resulted in suicide. At least now we know her real name, and that she had a loving family. Now Blake and Lori's daughter has grandparents from the East Coast. Arab cousins. Finally, there was a reunion of two families. Welling found out that Kimberly McLean was not prosecuted under any of her identities. Most of us experience loneliness and homesickness at first when we go to university or join the army. Are you waiting for a phone call from mom or dad? And Kimberly had been on her own since she was 18. It's hard to imagine that someone can leave their family and never see her again. In the year 2016, the name of Lori Raff was removed from the state database of missing and unidentified persons.